The death of Miss America was only the beginning. They'd created a monster out of her mother, forced a confession, then cold-bloodedly murdered her in prison when she was no longer useful. This wasn't justice. This was their method of reputation management, and one reporter accidentally learned the whole truth. Now he's next on the list. Marcus Vance's office sat above a Greek diner in Fishtown, and the smell of fried onions had soaked into the walls so deep it had become part of the furniture. The voice recorder lay at the edge of his desk, among empty coffee cups and yellowed newspaper clippings. Marcus reached out, fingertips brushing the worn play button. Again. Chloe Campbell's voice filled the space between filing cabinets stuffed with old cases. "Marcus, if you're listening to this, then I was right. They control more than anyone can imagine." Static cut through the sentence. Marcus closed his eyes. He'd heard this recording 97 times, maybe 98. He'd lost count somewhere between the 100th glass of whiskey and the 4th sleepless night. Chloe's inflection. That's what hooked his professional instinct. Not the words. The pauses between them. The barely perceptible tremor she tried to mask with businesslike efficiency. This was fear, wrapped in bravado. For Detective Frank Miller, the case had closed 3 weeks ago. Diana Campbell confessed to murdering her own daughter. The prosecutor's office celebrated a quick win. The press got their monster mother. The public got catharsis. Everything tied up neat, wrapped with justice's red bow. Marcus hit pause. The office silence deafened louder than any noise. He stood, walked to the window. Through the grimy glass, the brick canyon of the neighboring building was visible. Somewhere below, trash cans clattered. Philadelphia waking up for another day of lies and compromises. The recorder called him back to the desk. Marcus returned, sank into the chair. The leather cracked under his weight, releasing its familiar groan. He opened the bottom drawer, pulled out a bottle of bourbon, poured 3 fingers into a stained mug that read, "Best Reporter of the Year, 2019. The irony burned his throat harder than the alcohol. Chloe Campbell first called him at 2 a.m, 4 months ago. Her voice sounded different then, harder, more confident. She spoke his name like an incantation capable of breaking a curse. "You wrote about Judge Harrington, about that corruption scandal everyone wanted buried. You were the only one who wasn't afraid." Marcus had smirked at that. Afraid. He'd lost 3 steady income sources and received an anonymous threat to break his kneecaps over that article. He'd felt fear. He'd just learned to live with it, like chronic joint pain. Now, Chloe was dead, and her voice existed only in digital format on an ancient recorder. Marcus ran his palm across his face. Stubble scratched his skin. He hadn't shaved in 3 days, maybe 4. He avoided the bathroom mirror because his reflection had started reminding him of his father in his final years. The same bags under the eyes, the same resignation in the gaze. A knock at the door yanked him from memory. Marcus tensed. Visitors at 7 a.m. promised nothing good. His hand instinctively reached for the bottom drawer, where, among old notepads, lay a Glock 19. A gift from Frank Miller for his 40th birthday. "In case your curiosity gets you killed," the detective had said. A second knock, more insistent. Marcus stood, circled the desk. Wooden floorboards creaked under his weight. He cracked the door open, leaving the chain in place. Eleanor Campbell stood in the hallway. Chloe's mother looked like she'd aged 20 years in 3 weeks. Hair that was once carefully styled hung in gray strands, eyes sunken deep into their sockets, ringed with purple shadows of insomnia. She clutched a cardboard box in her hands. Marcus removed the chain, pulled the door wide. "Mrs. Campbell." "I brought Chloe's things." The woman's voice came out mechanical, stripped of inflection. "The police returned them yesterday. I can't look at them." Marcus took the box. It was lighter than he expected. A life packed in cardboard. "You're the only one who believed her," Eleanor continued. Her gaze was empty, staring through him. "Everyone else decided that that my daughter-in-law—" She didn't finish the sentence, turned and walked toward the stairs, hunched under an invisible weight. Marcus closed the door, set the box on the desk next to the recorder. 2 relics of a dead girl. He opened the lid. On top lay a worn copy of The Great Gatsby. Marcus took the book, flipped through the pages. Penciled notes filled the margins. He reinvented himself. I'm trying to do the same. Chloe's handwriting, calligraphic, perfect, like her public image. Deeper in the box, faded photographs, a Columbia University student ID, a silver ring on a thin chain. Marcus pulled out a thick art history textbook. The binding was worn, corners dog-eared from frequent use. He opened the book at random. A page with a reproduction of Botticelli's Birth of Venus. Between the pages, something hard. Marcus extracted a metal key. Plain, with no identifying marks except a stamped number, 247. A thin white ribbon was tied to it. On a scrap of paper attached to the ribbon, shaky handwriting read, "If something happens to me." Marcus's heart beat faster. Adrenaline burned away the remaining alcoholic fog from his head. This was Chloe's final message. The insurance policy she'd mentioned in that very recording. He flipped the paper over. On the reverse side, the name of a bank, First National Heritage Bank, downtown. Marcus squeezed the key in his palm. Cold metal bit into his skin. So she knew. Chloe Campbell, the perfect Miss America with the dazzling smile and flawless posture, knew her life was in danger. She'd prepared, left a trail for him. Marcus checked his watch. 7:45. The bank opened at 9. An hour and 15 minutes. He poured himself more whiskey, downed it in one gulp. The liquid scorched his esophagus, but his hands stopped shaking. The plan was simple. Get to the bank, open the box, take the contents, and then he'd get the answers the official investigation had buried with Chloe. But simplicity deceives. He locked the office, descended the creaky stairs. Fishtown's streets were deserted in the pre-dawn hour. The rumble of his old Chevy broke the silence. The newsroom was a 20-minute drive in a neighborhood where new condos neighbored boarded-up storefronts. Marcus parked at the service entrance. The building greeted him with dead silence. The security guard slept at his desk, head tilted back, mouth open. Marcus walked past, climbed to the 3rd floor. The hallway drowned in semi-darkness. Fluorescent lights hummed, creating uneven illumination. His office was at the end, last door on the right. Marcus felt for keys in his pocket, moved closer. The door was ajar. He froze. His heart plummeted. The lock wasn't broken. No scratches, no damage. Professional work. Marcus slowly pushed the door. It swung open soundlessly. Inside, 2 shadows moved. The men wore dark business suits, out of place in this kingdom of paper chaos. One stood at his desk, methodically searching through drawers. The other worked on the computer tower, some device connected to it. They hadn't heard him, or pretended not to. Marcus stepped back. A floorboard creaked under his weight. Both men turned simultaneously, faces without expression, eyes cold, assessing. Professionals. Offices closed. Marcus was surprised by the calmness of his own voice. The one at the computer straightened. Tall, athletic build, scar above his right eyebrow. Mr. Vance, you shouldn't have come here. No accent, perfect diction, a voice stripped of emotion. The second enforcer, stocky, bull-necked, stepped toward Marcus. The movement was unhurried, confident. He wasn't in a rush. Instinct screamed, run. Reason demanded answers. Marcus held his ground. Who sent you? A smirk twisted the tall one's face. You're asking the wrong questions. The stocky one closed the distance. 3 more steps. 2. Marcus spun, bolted for the exit. An iron grip clamped on his shoulder, spun him around. A blow to the stomach knocked the air from his lungs. Marcus doubled over, tried to shove the attacker away. A second hit landed on his jaw. Flash of pain, taste of blood. The floor tilted. Marcus grabbed the desk edge, maintaining balance. His fingers found a heavy object, an onyx paperweight, a gift from the newsroom for his investigation into City Hall corruption. He pivoted, swung with all his strength. The onyx smashed into the stocky enforcer's shoulder. Crunch. Howl. The man staggered back, clutching his arm, his face contorted with pain and rage. The tall one moved forward, faster than seemed possible for someone his size. Marcus backpedaled, toppled a filing cabinet. Cardboard boxes of case files cascaded down, creating a temporary barrier. The tall one didn't even slow, stepped over the debris, grabbed Marcus by the shirt, threw him against the wall. The back of his head slammed into concrete. The world swam. Strong hands pinned him to the wall. The tall one's face was an inch from his own. Forget about the girl. Forget everything. This is your only warning. Marcus jerked, trying to break free. His fingers clawed at the attacker's wrist, found something hard on the cuff. He yanked with all his strength. Fabric tore. Something heavy dropped into his palm. The tall one released him, stepped back, looked at his torn cuff, then at Marcus. For a moment, something like doubt flickered in his eyes. "We're leaving," he snapped at the stocky one. Both men turned and exited the office. Footsteps faded down the corridor. Marcus slid down the wall, collapsed onto the floor, breathing ragged, painful. His ribs burned with each inhale. He unclenched his palm. On his skin lay a silver cufflink, heavy, expensive. A logo engraved on the surface, intertwined letters A and S inside a stylized shield. The professional's first mistake. The first thread. Marcus staggered to his feet, approached the desk. The computer monitor glowed with a black screen. A command line cursor blinked. Last executed command, format C/P3. 3-pass format. Data destroyed irretrievably. All his investigations, all his contacts, all audio recordings of conversations with Chloe, erased. Marcus sank into the chair, clutched the safety deposit key in one hand, the cufflink in the other. They hadn't searched for the key. It had been in his pocket the whole time. They'd come to destroy what he already had. Digital evidence. Chloe's voice. This wasn't a burglary. This was a surgical operation to eliminate traces. And a warning. Marcus studied the cufflink. The intertwined letters reflected the monitor's faint glow. A and S. Aegis Security? Amelia Stone? Didn't matter. The threat had stopped being abstract. It had acquired physical form in the pain of his broken ribs and the taste of blood in his mouth. The enemy no longer hid in the shadows of theory. They had faces, expensive suits, and data destruction experts. Marcus stood, slipped the cufflink into his pocket next to the key. The rules of the game had changed. Now he couldn't just write an article. Now he'd have to survive. The sun rose over Philadelphia, but the light brought no comfort. Marcus stood in the middle of his demolished office, and the chaos around him seemed like a materialization of his internal state. Cardboard boxes lay overturned, their contents scattered across the floor like the remains of an exploded library. The computer sat silent with its black screen, a digital tombstone for his investigation. He ran his fingers over the cracked monitor. Years of work, hundreds of hours of recordings. Chloe's voice, trusting him with her fears and hopes. All erased, wiped clean with surgical precision. Marcus slipped his hand into his jacket pocket. His fingers found two objects: the cold cufflink engraved with A and S, and the even colder safety deposit key. All his hope fit in a 3-inch piece of metal. The key. His only ace in a demolished world. He sat in the chair, avoiding broken glass. Pain in his ribs reminded him of the night's fight with every breath. Marcus pulled out the bourbon bottle from the bottom drawer, miraculously intact, and poured himself a generous portion. The alcohol burned his throat, but dulled reality's sharp edges. The phone rang. Marcus stared at the old device. Black plastic, rotary dial, a relic from an era when the world seemed simpler. The ringing continued, demanding and insistent. He picked up the receiver. "Mr. Vance?" A woman's voice came through, calm, methodical. No accent, no emotion. Perfect diction taught at expensive private schools. "My name is Amelia Stone." Marcus straightened. He'd heard the name. Executive Director of the Miss America organization. The woman who turned a beauty pageant into a multi-million-dollar empire. "I know who you are." "Wonderful. That saves time." A pause, not awkward but calculated. "I'd like to speak with you about the tragic situation with Chloe Campbell." "Speak." "Indeed. You see, Mr. Vance, some stories, however tragic, require delicate handling. Excessive publicity can cast a shadow on the reputations of people who have nothing to do with what happened." Marcus clicked his lighter. The metallic sound cut sharp through the office silence. "Continue." "I'm proposing a constructive dialogue. We could discuss your concerns regarding this matter. Perhaps reach a mutually beneficial solution. Generous compensation for the right understanding of the situation." Steele hid behind polite phrases. Marcus heard it in every word, carefully chosen and weighed. "Mutually beneficial solution," he repeated. "Yes, I'm certain, Mr. Vance, that you're a reasonable man. We both understand how the world works. Some battles can't be won. Why waste energy on something that will only bring suffering?" "Whose suffering concerns you? Chloe's?" The voice became slightly quieter, not angrier, but more dangerous. "My people informed me about yesterday's incident in your office. Unfortunate. I hope you weren't seriously hurt." Marcus gripped the receiver tighter. His ribs throbbed with pain. "Your people." "I don't like ambiguity, Mr. Vance. Let's speak frankly. You have questions about Chloe Campbell's death. I'm offering answers. And the opportunity to continue your career without complications." "And if I refuse your generosity?" The pause lasted 3 seconds. When Amelia Stone spoke again, her voice was perfectly level. "Then you'll have to live with the consequences of your choice. Good day, Mr. Vance." Dial tone. Marcus set down the receiver. His hand trembled, not from fear, but from rage. The phone rang again. He grabbed the receiver. "Vance!" His voice came out sharper than he intended. "Mr. Vance?" A different voice, male, shattered by grief beyond recognition. "This is Richard Campbell." Chloe's father. Marcus closed his eyes. If Amelia Stone was an ice scalpel, Richard Campbell was a sledgehammer. "Mr. Campbell?" "They killed my girl." The words tore out in ragged sobs. "They say it was Diana. They say she confessed. But I know it's a lie. You understand? It's a lie." "Mr. Campbell, find them." The voice turned hard, demanding. "Find whoever's behind this. I don't care about trials. I don't care about jury room justice. I want names. I want to watch them burn." Marcus rubbed the bridge of his nose. A headache expanded behind his eyes. "I'm doing everything I can." "Do the impossible!" The shout echoed through the receiver. "I have money, connections, whatever it takes. Name your price. Just find them. Destroy them." "That's not how it works." "Then how?" The voice broke. "How do I get my daughter back? Tell me, how?" Silence hung between them, heavy, unanswerable. "I'll find the truth," Marcus said finally. "I promise." "Truth." Bitter laughter. "Screw the truth. I want revenge." Dial tone. Marcus set down the receiver and finished the whiskey. 2 calls in 10 minutes. 2 grinding stones pulverizing him to dust. Amelia Stone demanded silence. Richard Campbell demanded blood. He stood, walked to the window. The city awakened below, indifferent, eternal. People rushing to work, drinking coffee, solving small problems. Their world wasn't collapsing. Marcus slipped his hand into his pocket, felt the key. Point of no return passed. The bank opened at 9. He had 40 minutes. The old Chevy started on the second try. The engine coughed, rattled, then settled into a steady rumble. Marcus pulled out of the parking lot, merging into morning traffic. Philadelphia had changed overnight. Or he had. Every car seemed like a threat. Every pedestrian a spy. Paranoia became second skin, unpleasant but necessary. He noticed the sedan at the 3rd intersection. Black, tinted windows. Expensive. S-Class Mercedes. It stayed 3 cars back, perfectly mirroring Marcus's every move. Demonstrative. Brazen. Marcus turned right. The sedan followed. Another turn. The sedan didn't fall back. This wasn't just a tale. This was psychological pressure materialized in metal and glass. A message from Amelia Stone. "We're here. We see everything. You're not going anywhere." Marcus floored the gas pedal. The engine roared. The Chevy shot forward, running a yellow light. Behind him, brakes squealed. Other cars couldn't react in time. The black sedan ran the red without hesitation. The chase began. Marcus zigzagged through streets, using every alley and turn. The sedan didn't try to run him off the road. It operated smarter. Overtook and braked hard, blocking the path. Pressed close at intersections. Several times it struck his rear bumper noticeably, not hard, but enough to make Marcus's car fishtail. This wasn't an assassination attempt. This was sophisticated torture. Cat and mouse, where the goal wasn't to kill, but to exhaust. Scare him half to death. Show him his life was in someone else's hands. Marcus turned onto Market Street. Ahead, on the left, the entrance to a multi-level mall parking garage appeared. The plan formed instantly. He jerked the wheel, shooting under the rising gate arm. The plastic bar struck the roof with a dull crack. Behind him, the sedan braked, too late to follow. Marcus wove between concrete pillars, climbing level by level. Tires screamed on turns. The smell of burned rubber mixed with gasoline exhaust. 3rd floor, 4th, 5th. The top level was nearly empty. Marcus parked against the far wall, leaving the engine running. Jumped out of the car, ran to the fire escape. Metal steps rang under his boots. He descended, skipping several steps, ignoring the pain in his knee. 2nd floor, 1st. Marcus emerged into the shopping concourse. Bright lights, music from speakers, smell of fresh pastries from the coffee shop. Normal world, where people didn't run from killers in expensive suits. He blended into the crowd of shoppers, exited through the main entrance. A taxi pulled up 3 minutes later. Through the back window, Marcus watched the black sedan circling slowly on the parking garage's top level. Predator who'd lost its prey. First National Heritage Bank towered in the heart of the business district, a cathedral of money and power. Marble columns, bronze doors, ceilings 3 stories high. Marcus entered, and the air conditioning's coolness hit his flushed face. The air smelled of furniture polish, old paper, and something metallic. The clerk behind the counter smiled professionally. "How can I help you?" "I need to access a safety deposit box." The procedure took 10 minutes. Documents, signatures, verification. The clerk led him down a corridor carpeted thick enough to swallow all sound. The massive steel vault door opened with a quiet hydraulic hiss. Inside reigned silence and cold. Walls, floor to ceiling, a grid of steel boxes in various sizes, each with 2 locks. The clerk stopped at box number 247. "Your key, please." Marcus pulled out the key. The metal had warmed from his body heat. 2 keys turned simultaneously, a series of dry clicks. "I'll leave you alone." The clerk departed soundlessly. Marcus stood alone. He pulled out the metal drawer. It slid soundlessly, cold to the touch. Inside, on red velvet, lay a single item, a VHS tape. Marcus stared at it, not believing his own eyes. Not a folder of documents, not a flash drive, not microfilm. A bulky, archaic cassette with a label on which Chloe's handwriting read one word: truth. Disappointment hit his chest, knocking the air from his lungs. In an era of cloud storage and microchips, Chloe had left him a technological puzzle, an artifact from the last century. He hadn't received a weapon, but a riddle. Not an answer, but a question. Where the hell could he watch this tape? The search for a VCR became a surreal journey. Marcus called 3 friends. All had long since ditched that junk. In electronics stores, they looked at him like he was crazy. VHS? Seriously? You know what year it is? Hope faded with each refusal. He stumbled on the thrift shop by accident. Old sign, peeling paint, window crammed with junk. Inside smelled of dust and forgotten decades. An elderly owner dozed behind the counter. "You have VCRs?" The old man blinked, sizing him up with a glance. "In the back room. $50. The device was worn but functional. Marcus paid cash. Leaving the shop, he caught himself thinking bitterly. To solve a 21st century crime, he'd had to buy a time machine. The Starlight Motel lived up to its name only by virtue of a flickering neon sign. A blue star flashed and died with nervous frequency. The room cost $30 a night. Marcus connected the VCR to an old television. inserted the cassette. Several seconds of static. Then, Chloe Campbell's face appeared on the screen. She'd filmed herself. The camera shook. Poor lighting, a desk lamp pointed at her face created harsh shadows. Her eyes were red from tears, but her voice held steel resolve. "Marcus?" She stared directly into the camera, as if seeing him through time. "If you're watching this, then I'm dead." Pause. She swallowed, gathering strength. "Everyone thinks they know my story. Perfect Miss America, Golden Girl. But they know nothing. Nobody knows." Tears streamed down her cheeks, smearing mascara. "My mother, Diana, she's not who she seems." Marcus leaned closer to the screen. Chloe spoke haltingly, breathlessly, about her mother's double life, about debts, about people she owed, about how Diana used her own daughter as merchandise, selling her image, trading on her success. She made a deal with the pageant organizers. I found out by accident, documents in her safe. Chloe wiped her face with her hand. "My victory was bought. I didn't win, honestly. I was purchased." Her voice broke. "And now I know. I have proof. I can destroy her. Destroy all of them. But she's my mother. How do I live with that?" The camera wobbled. Chloe covered her face with her hand. "I don't know what to do. I thought about blackmail, about forcing her to confess, freeing me from this cage. But what if she... what if..." The screen went dark. The tape ended. Marcus sat motionless, staring at the snow on the screen. The motel room's silence deafened. He'd expected dirt on Amelia Stone. He'd received a confession about family nightmare. This tape didn't simplify the case. It made it infinitely more complex. Chloe, not an innocent victim. She was a manipulator, ready to blackmail her own mother. Diana, not a monster. A desperate woman cornered by her own child. Truth turned out not to be a life preserver, but a stone dragging him to the bottom. Marcus rewound the tape, hit play again. Chloe's face filled the screen. "If you're watching this, it means I'm dead." He watched the confession over and over, searching for answers in a dead girl's words. But Chloe hadn't left answers, only questions. And Marcus Vance understood. The truth he'd been desperately seeking wasn't a weapon. It was a moral grenade, and he held it in trembling hands. The motel room sank into silence. The air conditioner's hum, the neon sign flickering outside the window, the distant rumble of highway traffic, all sounds merged into monotonous background noise, against which Marcus Vance's heart hammered. The tape lay on the battered table. Its plastic casing reflected the television's blue glow. Marcus stared at it and understood. He held power in his hands. Not abstract, not theoretical. Real, tangible power over people's fates. He was the only person in the world who possessed this truth. No one else had heard Chloe's confession, seen her tears, heard her voice break when she spoke of her mother's betrayal. This recording could destroy Diana Campbell. Or save her. Expose Richard Campbell as a man whose daughter had prepared to blackmail her own mother. Or give him a weapon against Amelia Stone. Incinerate Chloe's memory. Or protect it. One decision from him, and the balance of power would shift forever. Marcus stood, walked to the window, pulled back the heavy curtain. The parking lot below was empty, except for a few trucker rigs. The blue star on the sign blinked with a metronome's persistence. For the past 3 days, he'd been a pawn A piece pushed around the board, knocked down, swept aside. They'd beaten him in his office, erased his data, hunted him through the city. Now the arrangement had changed. He held the trump card, a queen capable of flipping the game. Marcus felt it for the first time in a long while. Control. Not the illusion of control, but real power. He could dictate terms. He returned to the table, sank into the chair, pulled out a notebook, started writing options. Option 1. Richard Campbell. Show him the tape. Let him see his daughter's true face, not an innocent victim, but someone ready to blackmail her own mother. Trade this truth for resources, money, connections, influence. Use them against the real enemy, Amelia Stone. Downside. Richard craved vengeance, not truth. Seeing the recording, he might collapse completely, or direct all his rage at Marcus for destroying his last illusions about his daughter. Option 2. Amelia Stone. Direct blackmail. Offer a deal. Her confession to corporate manipulation in exchange for silence about the Campbell family drama. The tape as bargaining chip. A quiet exchange of truth for truth. Downside. Stone wasn't the type who made deals. She eliminated threats, didn't negotiate with them. Plus, knowing the recording existed, she'd double her efforts to destroy it. And to destroy him. Option 3. Go public. Give the tape to journalists. Let the world see the truth about Chloe Campbell. Let the public decide who's guilty. Save Diana by showing her daughter was no angel. Downside. This was a posthumous execution of Chloe's reputation. The world would remember her not as a victim, but as a manipulator. The girl who'd trusted him with her final secret would be trampled by the media. Option 4. Destroy it. Erase the recording. Bury this truth forever. Let Diana carry her cross. Let Chloe remain perfect in memory. Downside. Then why did she do all this? Why leave the tape? Destroying the recording meant betraying her trust. Marcus threw down the pen. The notebook was covered with chaotic notes, crossed-out phrases. Every scenario led to a dead end. Every decision carried destruction. Power had become a curse. He grabbed the tape, inserted it into the VCR, hit play. Again. Chloe's face filled the screen. Marcus, if you're watching this, it means I'm dead. He listened to her voice, broken, frightened, full of despair. With each word, the girl seemed younger, more defenseless. My mother, Diana, she's not what she seems. Marcus studied her face, eyes red from crying, smeared mascara, trembling lips. This wasn't a monster, not a cold manipulator. This was a broken child. A child betrayed by the person closest to her. A mother who'd sold her victory. A mother who'd turned her daughter into merchandise. I don't know what to do. I thought about blackmail, about forcing her to confess. Chloe covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking with sobs. Marcus stopped playback, rewound, started again, and again. Hours passed. The sun set completely, plunging the world into darkness. The neon star outside the window blinked relentlessly. Marcus re-watched the recording, searching for answers in a dead girl's words. But Chloe had left no answers, only questions. And Marcus Vance understood. He wasn't a judge. He had no right to decide whose reputation mattered more, Chloe's or Diana's. Whose pain deserved recognition, whose deserved oblivion. The responsibility pressed on his chest heavier than broken ribs. He wasn't an arbiter, but an executioner. Any choice meant someone's death. Maybe not physical, but death of reputation, memory, hope. By morning, Marcus was exhausted to complete emptiness. He sat in the chair, staring at a fixed point. The tape lay on the table. The TV showed static snow. He needed to act. Quickly. Decisively. Amelia Stone's people were searching for him. Every minute of delay increased the danger. But Marcus couldn't make himself move. The paralysis of indecision gripped him tighter than any chains. He understood. This pause might cost him his life. But understanding didn't help. The power he'd so desired had turned to poison. The tighter he held the tape, the deeper it bit into his soul. Marcus closed his eyes. Chloe's image stood before him, young, frightened, alone. "How do I live with this?" she'd asked on the recording. Now that question had become his own. Explosion. The door flew inward, ripped from its hinges by one monstrous blow. Marcus leaped to his feet, adrenaline instantly burning away the remnants of numbness. In the doorway stood them. Two enforcers in expensive suits, the same ones who'd trashed his office. This time, their eyes held neither warning nor annoyance, only cold, businesslike resolve. This wasn't intimidation. This was a cleanup operation. They moved inside in sync, cutting off escape routes. The tall one headed for the table, for the tape. The stocky one straight at Marcus. No words, no threats. The time for talking had passed. Marcus grabbed the heavy desk lamp, hurled it at the stocky one. The enforcer dodged, the lamp shattered against the wall. 1 second of reprieve. Marcus lunged for the table, flipped it. The tape hit the floor. The tall one bent to pick it up. Marcus kicked him in the face. Crunch of cartilage. Howl. But the stocky one was already on him, iron grip on his throat, air cut off. Marcus desperately drove his elbow into the attacker's ribs. Once, twice, 3 times. The grip loosened. Marcus broke free, grabbed a chair, swung. The chair smashed into the enforcer's shoulder, splintered apart. But it was enough. Marcus dove for the tape, snatched it up. The tall one was rising, blood streaming from his broken nose. The stocky one moved left, blocking the exit to the door. The trap was closing. Only one way out. The window. Marcus spun and ran. Leap! Glass exploded into 1,000 shards. Pain lanced through his back, arms, face. He tumbled outside, slammed into the metal fire escape. Behind him, a roar of fury. Marcus rose, staggering, the tape still in his hand. He hurtled down the rusted steps. Metal rang under his boots. 2nd floor. 1st. Jump from the final platform, landing on the parking lot asphalt. Pain in his knee detonated, but Marcus didn't stop. He ran into the darkness of alleys, clutching to his chest the only thing he'd managed to save. An old videotape. A dead girl's last will. The adrenaline faded. Pain took its place. All-consuming, pulsing through his entire body. Each breath brought agony to broken ribs. Marcus stumbled through deserted streets. Dark drops of blood trailed behind him. His shirt stuck to his back, soaked with blood from glass cuts. His face burned. His hands trembled. But he held the tape tight. He needed shelter. Help. At least a first aid kit. Ahead, neon light appeared. A 24-hour store. The only bright spot in the surrounding darkness. Marcus pushed the door. A bell above the entrance chimed pathetically. Inside was empty. Behind the register, a teenager dozed in headphones. Marcus walked past, heading toward the pharmacy section. A television hung from the ceiling, late-night news broadcast. Marcus glanced at the screen and froze. Diana Campbell's photograph filled half the screen. The anchor spoke with a grave expression, the ticker scrolling below. Woman accused of daughter's murder. Diana Campbell found dead in cell. The world tilted. Marcus stepped closer, staring at the screen. According to preliminary official reports, death occurred as a result of suicide. The body was discovered by Delaware County jail guards around midnight. Midnight. Marcus checked his watch. 3 a.m. While he'd sat in the motel, agonizing over choices, rewatching the tape over and over, while he'd decided how to use the truth, while Stone's enforcers had burst in, distracting his attention, the system had delivered its decisive blow. Understanding crashed down on him with the force of a physical blow. The attack at the motel. The brutality with which they'd tried to take the tape. This wasn't just a raid, it was a diversion. While Marcus Vance, the only person capable of saving Diana Campbell, fought for his life in a rundown motel, while he bled out, clinging to a scrap of plastic, Amelia Stone's people were eliminating the last key witness. Diana Campbell hadn't killed herself. She'd been murdered. Murdered to permanently close the most obvious storyline. Murdered while he, Marcus, thought he held power in his hands. The official story was now sealed. A murderous mother, broken by guilt, took her own life. Justice prevailed. Case closed. And the tape in his hands. This tape meant nothing anymore. Exposing the dead was pointless. Cruel. Diana Campbell didn't need defense. She needed a coffin. Marcus sank to his haunches, leaning against the refrigerator case. Blood dripped to the floor. The tape slipped from weakened fingers. His power had been an illusion. His control, a fantasy. While he'd hesitated, weighing fates on the scales of his conscience, the real players had already made their move. Checkmate. Marcus Vance had lost, and the worst part, he'd lost without even realizing the game had begun. Marcus Vance's office looked like a battlefield after bombardment. Overturned shelving, scattered papers, shattered glass. Every detail screamed total defeat. Marcus sat in his battered chair, staring at a fixed point. Bruises on his face throbbed with pain. Glass cuts stung under improvised bandages. He'd lost. Amelia Stone had won so completely that even the defeat itself seemed like a work of art. Diana Campbell was dead. Official version, suicide. Suicide note found. Case closed. The story was written, published, sealed with stamps and signatures. A murderous mother, broken by guilt, took her own life in her cell. Justice prevailed. The world got a simple, comprehensible ending. Marcus looked at the videotape lying among the wreckage of his office. A few days ago, it had seemed like the Holy Grail to him. A weapon capable of changing everything. Now, just a scrap of plastic. A useless artifact. Making Chloe's confession public now would only trample a dead girl's memory, turn the victim into the villain, and cause no harm whatsoever to Amelia Stone. Posthumous vandalism instead of justice. The tape he'd risked his life for had become a silent reproach, a symbol of his complete failure. Marcus reached for the whiskey bottle on the floor, poured a generous portion into a dirty mug. The television in the corner of the office ran silently. On screen, her. Amelia Stone. Flawless, elegant, with an expression of grief on her face. She was giving an interview on the steps of her office building. Cameras surrounded her, microphones stretched toward her lips. Marcus turned on the sound. "This tragedy has shaken us all." Amelia's voice sounded calm, with notes of sadness. "We will establish the Chloe Campbell Foundation to support young talent. Her legacy will live on." Legacy? Marcus smiled bitterly. Amelia Stone hadn't just covered her tracks. She'd turned blood and suffering into a PR campaign, used deaths to build a shining image. Brilliant. Revolting. Perfect. The official story had been written, and Marcus Vance remained the only person in the world who understood. Every word in it was a lie. The camera switched to another story. A reporter stood by the grim walls of Delaware County Jail. Questions remain regarding exactly how Diana Campbell gained access to the means of suicide. The entire perimeter and interior of the facility are guarded around the clock by employees of the private security firm Aegis Security. Aegis Security. Marcus froze, mug halfway to his lips. That name. He'd heard it before. Where? He lowered the mug, straining his memory. Aegis. Greek shield. Marcus slowly slipped his hand into his jacket pocket. His fingers found cold metal. The cufflink. He pulled it out, held it up to the banker's lamplight. The silver surface reflected greenish radiance. A logo was clearly engraved on it, a stylized Greek shield. The Aegis logo. The world around him slowed. The cufflink, torn from the enforcer's cuff when he'd beaten Marcus in his office. And the security firm that had guarded Diana Campbell in her final hours. The same company. This wasn't a coincidence. Marcus stood abruptly, knocking over his chair. Pain exploded in his ribs, but he paid no attention. He lunged for his laptop, miraculously surviving the destruction, opened the lid, started typing frantically. Aegis Security corporate structure. The first link led to the company's official website, a faceless corporate page with photos of smiling guards. At the bottom, in small print, Aegis Security is a subsidiary of Sterling Gable Holdings. Sterling Gable. Marcus opened a new tab. Sterling Gable Holdings. A massive conglomerate with assets in dozens of industries: real estate, media, entertainment. And there, among the list of subsidiaries, Miss America Organization. The circle closed. Aegis Security belonged to Sterling Gable. Sterling Gable owned the Miss America pageant, and Amelia Stone ran the Miss America empire. The attackers in his office worked for the same corporation that had guarded Diana in jail. Understanding crashed down on him with crushing force. Diana Campbell hadn't killed herself. She'd been murdered. Murdered by people working for Amelia Stone. Cold-bloodedly, methodically eliminated the last key witness and passed it off as suicide. Marcus recoiled from the laptop, breathing hard. All apathy, all cynicism burned away in an instant. He understood. The war wasn't over yet. Yes, he'd lost the battle for public opinion. The story of Chloe and Diana, the way he'd wanted to tell it, was dead. But a new war had begun. A war for the truth about murder in a federal prison. And in this war, a newspaper article would be useless. Stone's lawyers would tear any publication to shreds in court. Marcus didn't need a scandal. He needed an arrest warrant. He had to stop thinking like a journalist. He needed to become a strategist. Give the justice system a weapon it couldn't ignore. Marcus returned to the desk, cleared a space, sweeping debris to the floor. Laid out 3 items before him. First, the videotape. Its contents were no longer a family secret. Now it was motive for murder. It proved why Amelia Stone desperately needed to silence Diana Campbell forever. Second, the cufflink, physical evidence. A direct link between his attackers and the security firm that had watched over Diana in her final hours. Third, a printout of Sterling Gable's corporate structure. Irrefutable proof of Aegis Securities' connection to Amelia Stone's empire. This was a ready-made case for a prosecutor. But Marcus couldn't just walk into a police station with this. The risk was too great that the evidence would disappear or that he himself would be eliminated. Amelia Stone controlled a massive machine. She had connections, resources, people at every level of power. But there was one person Marcus trusted. Detective Connor Sullivan, Homicide Division. 62 years old, 35 years on the force. An old Irishman who hated corruption and the wealthy more than anything in the world. Sullivan, the only cop in the city who hadn't sold out and never would. Marcus remembered his home address. They'd met 15 years ago when Marcus was writing a series of articles on unsolved murders. Sullivan was one of the few detectives willing to speak openly about the system's failures. Since then, they'd exchanged information from time to time, unofficially, for old time's sake. Marcus found a large manila envelope. Sealed inside the tape, the cufflink in a clear plastic bag, and printouts with corporate data. No note, no return address, an anonymous tip. He knew Sullivan would understand. The detective would see the connection, follow the chain, and latch onto this case with a death grip. Marcus wasn't writing the story. He was lighting the fuse. The following days dragged agonizingly slow. Marcus laid low, tended his wounds, monitored the news. At first, silence. Then, on the third day, a brief mention flashed in the evening news, almost unnoticeable. The Delaware County District Attorney's Office has announced a renewed investigation into the circumstances of Diana Campbell's death. The dominoes began to fall. On the fourth day, a full report. Journalists openly discussed questions for Aegis Security Management about inconsistencies in the official version. On the fifth day, the press mentioned the name of the detective leading the investigation. Connor Sullivan. Marcus sat in his office, watching the seed he'd planted sprout through the system's cracks. Sullivan had latched on. The cufflink led to the perpetrators, 2 Aegis guards who'd been on duty in the cell block the night Diana died. Interrogation of the perpetrators and the tape provided motive. The corporate connections transformed a case about a prisoner's murder into a case about conspiracy at the highest level. The domino principle had been set in motion, and Marcus Vance could only watch from the sidelines as the chain reaction destroyed a carefully constructed empire of lies. A week later, Marcus sat in the Alibi Bar, 3 blocks from his office, a quiet place where nobody knew him. Behind the bar, an old television. On screen, breaking news. Dozens of cameras aimed at the main entrance of the Sterling Gable Tower in Midtown Manhattan. Marcus looked up, drawn by the familiar building silhouette. The doors burst open. Amelia Stone emerged, surrounded by detectives. Her face was pale but calm, her posture perfectly straight. Detective Connor Sullivan walked beside her. His bulky frame, rumpled suit, weary face contrasted with her impeccable elegance. He stopped before the cameras, pulled a card with written rights from his pocket, read them clearly, methodically, then snapped handcuffs onto Amelia Stone's wrists. In that moment, the story of the Miss America tragedy evaporated, gave way to a much louder scandal. Conspiracy to commit murder. Corporate corruption. Murder under cover of state institutions. Marcus watched without a trace of a smile. He felt only a heavy, hard-won sense of completion. Not triumph, not joy, just the end. The phone in his pocket vibrated. Marcus pulled it out, looked at the screen. His editor. He answered, brought the phone to his ear. "Marcus!" The editor's voice cracked with excitement. "Where the hell are you? They just arrested Amelia Stone. This is the story of the decade. Why haven't I gotten a single line from you? You missed everything." Marcus slowly brought the glass of whiskey to his lips, took a sip, looked at his reflection in the mirror behind the bar. Weary face, bags under the eyes, scar above the eyebrow, gray at the temples. The face of a man who'd been through hell and survived. "Sometimes," he said quietly into the phone, "the best story is the one you help others write." Pause on the other end of the line. "What?" "Especially if it has the right ending." Marcus set the phone on the bar, finished the whiskey. On screen, Detective Sullivan led Amelia Stone to a police car. Cameras didn't let up, flashes blinded. The empire had fallen. Justice had prevailed. Not the way he'd planned, not the story he'd intended to write, but the right story. Marcus Vance stood from his stool, tossed a few bills on the bar. Limping, he walked out into Philadelphia's evening cool. Behind him, on the television screen, the world learned the truth. But Marcus wasn't watching anymore. His work was done.